What's up, guys? It's Instructor Az coming at you from the Warrior Martial Arts YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing the great Jon Jones. So for anyone who doesn't know who Johnny Bones Jones is, he is the former UFC light heavyweight champion, and he is one of the most successful and dominant MMA fighters of all time. Today we're going to be exploring and discussing how he utilizes elbows, one of his most effective tools and weapons, to get him the advantage in the fight. So in particular, I'm going to look at 3 different applications that Jon Jones uses for his elbow strikes in MMA. So let's get it started. The first type of elbow that Jon Jones uses is what you'd be classically taught in Muay Thai, which is bringing effectively the forearm here and this part of our elbow round and into the target. But it's really, and the same with all 3 of the techniques I'm going to show you today, it's less about the technique itself and it's more about the setup and how he lands it. So what Jon does to get this elbow strike off, bringing this elbow across here to the side of the temple, side of the jaw, or across the bridge of the nose, he has his arms forward and up, and he's using them as a measuring device. So he's bringing his front arm out here, and as if he was coming over the guard of his opponent, he's just trying to touch with this hand. The reason he's trying to touch is he has a very keen understanding of what would be needed to go from where his fingers are touching to get his elbow to then come in and strike. And it's that stepping in motion here. Notice my front foot steps in, boom, and I land that elbow in and across to the top of the face. So if you were to work this onto the bag or onto some pads, you'd have your arm coming out and we'd be touching. It might be a jab that you're throwing out. It might just be your fingers as if you were touching to the shoulders, to the guard. And eventually we're going to do a touch, and then we're going to step in, and as we step in, we're going to flex that elbow forward, boom, and strike in with that lead arm elbow. Now, Jon Jones has a massive long reach, and this is one of the reasons that he can be so effective, is his elbow is so far out in front that it can almost be used like some people would be using their arm. But regardless of the length of your arm, what you can know from this and what you can measure and figure out is the distance needed to go from where your fingers would touch a target to what would be needed to get your elbow to touch the target, okay? And having that touch, that feedback mechanism, is what makes that such an effective technique. All right, guys, going on to technique number 2. This is my favorite of all of Jon Jones's attacks, and it's that spinning elbow strike, okay? So the basic technique of a spinning elbow is that I'm bringing the back of my rear elbow round, and I'm striking into the side of the target. Now, obviously, the rotation on that spin is what's able to generate such an amazing amount of force on this technique. But as I said previously, it's not necessarily the technique that's so impressive, but the way he sets it up. So, Jon Jones is known for having very strong Greco-Roman wrestling. Greco-Roman wrestling will generally involve attacking what's called a single leg. So if I'm in my stance and guard here, my opponent's in front of me stance and guard, the idea of a single leg is that you attack one leg, lift it up, and then you use that leg to then either rotate, push into, get them against the fence to eventually bring your opponent to the floor. Now, the typical defense for someone who's defending a single leg, and you're going to understand why I'm talking about all of this in a moment when we refer back to the elbow, is that you bring your body backwards. So what's called a sprawling action, you shoot your legs back and you bring everything that they're attacking, which is your legs, back out of range. You can then get your arms in to push them back, create space, and get away from your opponent. The issue is if you are defending the single leg, you are inevitably going to bring your hands down to try to lift their body up or to get some underhooks, and you're also going to bring your head forward. So whilst this is a great defense for the single leg, it's a terrible way to be for a spinning elbow. So what Jones does is that he fakes the attack of that single leg by bringing his arms down. He level changes, which means he drops his head from his standing position, he bends those legs to come in and down, forcing that reaction of pulling back and bringing your head down, which he then uses to set up, boom, and bring that spinning elbow round into the side of the head. From here, fake low. It also brings him into the range for the elbow, comes round, bang, and strikes with that spinning elbow attack. All right, guys, the third and final way. Now, keep in mind, John uses a lot of different elbows. We haven't even got onto his ground game and how he attacks from the guard. I'm going to talk just about his standing techniques today. I've saved this one for last because what John is really known for is his diversity of striking and throwing things that are quite unusual to kind of the untrained eye, to the uninitiated. So this technique is what I refer to as a reverse rising elbow strike. A rising elbow strike can be thought of as like an uppercut. So if I was shooting an uppercut with my hand, it would look like that. If I was going to do a rising elbow, I would uppercut with my elbow, bringing it straight up from here, okay? I'm saying that's the regular rather than the reverse, because like I said, with the elbow strike, I strike across here with this bit of the forearm. Regular elbow, regular rising elbow. The reverse rising elbow, I'll show you from orthodox, we're going to hit with this rear part of the elbow. So instead of coming here, we're coming here. And to do so, John steps in and then rises up underneath the chin here. All right, bit harder to demo on a bag because the idea of this, of course, is to come underneath, but I'm just using this as an example of where my opponent would be. I step in with it, so that's either with a sliding motion or with a kind of skipping one-step motion. And again, what I'm really trying to do is to get in between the guard. I'm trying to get them to bring their hands here or to, in one way or another, freeze their position, which leaves them extremely vulnerable to coming up underneath here, boom, and striking to the jaw. Now, the reason you won't see this technique much is because it's very difficult to generate a huge amount of force through that range of motion. This is why you would typically come up this way. But as we know, it's the shot that you don't see coming that generally knocks you out. And whilst John doesn't necessarily knock you out with this technique, when you don't see it coming, it will give you what's called a flash KO, where you'll see this flash and you'll be completely disorientated. And then he takes advantage of that disorientation. He gets into the tie clinch, he starts operating with the knees, he might shoot for the takedown or just finish you off with strikes. So again, imagine that I had a target here, the chin coming underneath, my guard is here. Again, I can work those arms coming out. I'm stepping in and I'm coming up underneath, boom, and I'm raising that elbow up under the chin. This combines really nice as well. If you hit that target, boom, bring a regular elbow strike, boom, across with your rear arm from there. 1, 2, up and across. You can even incorporate it with the spin. I come up and I come round and strike in with that spinning elbow. So guys, I hope those were helpful. Those are just some of the ways that Johnny Bones Jones uses his elbows to attack his opponents. Implement it into your game and I will see you on the next one.